Hi, everyone, and welcome to Motivational Interviewing. My name is Brittany Watson, and I am the QI Project Coordinator here with the VNPC.
And my name is Angie Mann, and I am the QI nurse with the VNPC.
So, this training is basically just an informational session to help you learn a little bit about a technique that you probably already know a lot about and use all the time. It's an option to use for team meetings and in-service, or to just send out to your team if they need a refresher on a specific technique to start conversation with your patient population. Hope you guys are ready. Let's get started. So, in thinking, just like we were talking about, have you ever used motivational interviewing? You can poll the individuals in your class or in your group that are watching this training, and just think about it for a second. If you've ever used motivational interviewing, how was your experience? Is there anything that you learned, anything that you gained, any mistakes you might have made that you want to do better next time? I want you to take a second and just think about that. You can also pause this video to have a little bit of a discussion as well before you start the training.
So, based on what you just discussed with your group, what would you like to learn from today's session? Are there, just like Brittany was saying, some additional techniques you're hoping to learn today? Let's jump in and see what our objectives are. Today, we're going to talk about defining motivational interviewing as it relates to the provider-patient rapport. And then we're also going to recognize some of those techniques. And then we get to practice. We're going to pull it all together and do a little practicing. But first, we want to give you a little example of some active listening. So maybe you recognize these two. This is from the show Big Bang Theory. We've got Sheldon here with his girlfriend, Amy. And so just take a listen to see how Amy and Sheldon interact and what happens when Amy starts really listening to what Sheldon has to say.
First there was PlayStation, aka PS1. Then there's PS2, PS3, and now PS4. And that makes sense. You'd think after Xbox, there'd be Xbox 2. But no. Next came Xbox 360. And now, after 360, comes Xbox One. Why one? Maybe that's how many seconds of thought they put into naming it.
Can you get the butter, please?
However, with the Xbox One, I can control my entire entertainment system using voice commands. Up until now, I've had to use Leonard.
Then get the other one. Pass the butter.
Hang on. I don't feel like you're taking this dilemma seriously.
Fine, Sheldon. You have my undivided attention.
Okay, now, the PS4 is more angular and sleek looking.
No way!
It's true. But the larger size of the Xbox One may keep it from overheating.
You wouldn't want your gaming system to overheat?
No, well, you absolutely would not. And furthermore, the Xbox One now comes with a Kinect included.
Included?
Yes. Not sold separately. Although the PS4 uses cool new GDDR5 RAM, while the Xbox One is still using the conventional DDR3 memory.
Why would they still be using DDR3? Are they nuts?
See, that's what I thought. But then they go and throw in an ES RAM buffer.
Whoa, wait a second. Who's they?
Xbox.
You're kidding!
No, I am not. And this ES RAM buffer should totally bridge the 100 gigabit per second bandwidth gap between the two RAM types.
This is a nightmare. How will you ever make a decision?
See, I don't know. What should I do?
Please pass the butter!
So you can see from that video that when Sheldon realized Amy was really paying attention to him, he became so much more animated. She was able to ask lots more questions and get more information out of him. So you can kind of see how the interaction changed from when she really didn't care what he was having to say to all of a sudden being engaged with what he had to say and how he reacted.
Now, Going into the technical term for motivational interviewing, so it's a series of techniques developed from a variety of evidence-based approaches, which is very important, from cognitive psychology and social psychology. So motivational interviewing assumes that people with problematic behaviors have different levels of readiness for behavior change. One of the interesting things about motivational interviewing that we mentioned at the beginning is that it's something that you could use not only at work, but at home with your children, with your partner, anybody really, when you're dealing with someone who's in a different stage of change or who may have a goal that you are trying to assist them with reaching. So when we look at the why of MI, we think about these 4 key principles. Yes, they may look like just words, but they're all working together in synergy in order to really establish why motivational interviewing is so important. We have that partnership, the acceptance, the compassion, and the evocation, which are all 4 big principles that talk about a lot of the different factors and the techniques that we will actually use to facilitate motivational interviewing with the patient population or whoever you interact with. So later on, we'll go a little bit more in depth about the strategies that can be used, and like Angie said earlier, we'll get a chance to practice. So looking at motivational interviewing, we are thinking about your spirit. So your spirit is your personal motivation that drives your interaction with others. It's why you get up in the morning and do what you do. It's really what pushes you in order to assist and help the world around you. In summation, motivational interviewing is defined as a person-centered, very important, goal-oriented style of communication with particular focus on expressions of change. The goal is to increase personal motivation for and commitment to behavior change by eliciting and intensifying a person's own reasons for change in an atmosphere of acceptance and empathy. All of that to say that we are focusing on the people and we are working for the people. We are dealing in a realm that individuals are experts in their own care, in their own background, and on their own lives. And we are the experts in the care that we will provide to them. So we want to make sure it's of the highest quality.
So how are we going to do this? Keep in mind that part of a therapeutic relationship is having a deeply respectful foundation in mutual dialogue by asking permission. For example, knocking on the door before entering, talking to your patient or your client, tell me what brings you in today. I'd like to talk to you about your concerns. Opening conversations with those kind of lead-in statements often can give you even more information. So then you move into, so you've established your therapeutic relationship, and now you're moving into this how of motivational interviewing, or our process. We're going to be engaging with our patient, focusing our conversation, evoking the patient's goals, and then planning for the change. So let's take a deeper dive into these processes. Engaging. Here's an opportunity to build rapport with a patient while keeping your own biases in check. Find out a little bit more about their history and their needs. Establish trust and a mutually respectful relationship. Sit down for your conversation, be eye to eye. I used to work with a nurse who often said before she left a patient's room, "Is there anything else you need? I have time." Letting that patient know that they're important in that moment. Focusing. What's the priority for the patient? Asking the patient, so tell me a little bit more about your concerns. For motivational interviewing, here is where the conversation is moving in to the ongoing process of seeking and maintaining a direction for the exploration conversation. You're really drilling down and seeking to understand, which leads us to this concept of evoking. The definition of evoking is to bring forth or cause something to be remembered, felt, or experienced, especially an emotion or memory. The process of evoking is to elicit the patient's own motivation for change. Think goal-oriented, and the patient is able to talk themselves into the change. That's the whole crux of this idea of motivational interviewing. They're able to talk themselves into the change. So now that they've decided to change and they're open to it, let's put some feet to that by helping the patient create steps to take action. Make it more concrete. This is the process of deciding on a specific plan for change that the patient is willing to undertake. So maybe an example would be if the patient is willing to reach out to a resource center or make an appointment for medication management, or maybe even take a Narcan kit home. As we look at the what of motivational interviewing, here are some helpful skills. And I often think of this when I had a teenager. Boy, if I could have used these like more often, maybe I would have gotten some more information out of him. But you want to think of this acronym ORS. You want to use open-ended questions, affirmations, reflections, and summary. So for an open-ended question, of course, you want to, instead of asking, have you used any drugs during your pregnancy? You might be able to say, I treat a number of women who have used prescription medication and other drugs during their pregnancy. Please share with me which kinds of prescription meds or other drugs, if any, you have used during or before this pregnancy. Maybe instead of asking, have you ever been in treatment? You might say, tell me about your recovery journey. When it comes to affirmations, these are those statements of appreciation and empowerment that recognize the patient's current strengths and abilities. Keep in mind that if you were to even thank your patient for even making it to the appointment today, that could be very affirming because we have no idea what it takes for some of these patients to even get into our clinics or even get to our office, whether it's transportation issues, childcare issues, maybe concerns about insurance, whatever it is, just the fact that they even make it to the appointment is an opportunity to give them some encouragement. Maybe something else could be, I'm impressed that you followed up with the MAT referral, or you've stayed off of drugs for 2 months now. That's great. Just giving that patient those extra words of encouragement. So with reflections, now we're going to have a chance to provide information back to the patient and establish an understanding of what the patient is actually thinking or feeling or what they've expressed. Maybe a statement such as, what I hear you saying is, and then follow it with what the patient has just said. Maybe if a patient says, I've been this way using drugs for a long time, you might be able to reflect back, so this seems to be normal for you, or so this seems to be a hard cycle to break. When it comes to summaries, now we're moving to having a conclusion of the information that's shared. It's a little bit longer than a reflection. It's more of a recap of what has just been discussed. We want to identify next steps, and we want to make sure we understand what the patient has said. So an example might be, you have several reasons for quitting drugs. You want to get your life back. You want to give your baby the best chance at a healthy life, and you want to be able to manage life's issues without relying on drugs as a crutch. But on the other hand, you're worried about what kind of recovery path would work for you. You're worried about you won't have the motivation and the strength to stick to a recovery path. Does that sum up our conversation? So then what happens if there's confrontation? If there's confrontation in your discussion, think about the concept of rolling with resistance. This happens when points of view differ from the provider and the patient. Maybe the provider is moving too quickly or fails to understand something that is important to the patient. If this happens, change your strategy. Go back to the ORS techniques. Another concept could be this developing discrepancy. When a provider can point out a patient's behavior compared to their broader life goal. Patients are more motivated to change when they arrive at the conclusion themselves versus someone else deciding for them. So an example might be, I worked with a mom in the NICU who wanted to breastfeed, but she used fentanyl, and she informed the nursing staff she wouldn't do anything to harm her baby. There was a disconnect from what her goal was to provide breast milk for her baby and her behavior with her fentanyl use. When she was told that her breast milk would not be used for her baby, she had to decide to stop using fentanyl, and she ended up getting in a treatment program. Now that you have a patient who wants to change, let's explore some change talk. These are statements made by a patient indicating their motivation for, or their consideration of, or commitment to change their behavior. The goal would be to elicit that change talk, reflect it back, and pull for more. So we can use the darn cat model to help prepare for the change, that's the darn part, and discuss the cat model, which is the implementation part of deciding to change. So think darn cat. In other words, does your patient or your client have a desire to change? You could ask, why do you want to make this change? Are you able to elicit the ability to change? Are they able to come up with how they might be able to do it? How about eliciting the reasons for the change and asking them, like, what are their reasons? The need to change is, when it comes to a need to change, you could ask, how important is it for you to change? You could even do a scale of like 0 to 10, like 10 being the highest. How committed are they to wanting to change? And next, we want to implement the change. We want to move into that planning process through the CAT model. We want to make sure there's a commitment to the change. What will they do? Action to put that feet to the idea that they're wanting to change. So what are you considering doing, ready to do, or willing to do? And then taking those next steps. What steps have you already taken? Think even about harm reduction at this point. So maybe someone's not willing to completely come off of their drug use, but maybe they could decrease the amount that they use. So think harm reduction at this point too. If you can't get a complete change, maybe at least come up with some strategies to decrease the usage. So let's practice all of these great techniques.
All right, so it is time to test your knowledge. So this is an opportunity for you to split up into groups, or you all can just kind of play along all together, but you're going to be provided information about a client, like a case study, if you will, who's struggling with behavior change. And so thinking back to all those motivational interviewing skills that Angie just went through, we're going to be using those to guide your client through those stages of change, or our ways to escape to the next stage. Let's practice. Stage 1, pre-contemplation. A client presents to the clinic with a history of substance use disorder, 28 weeks pregnant. The client states, I do not think that I have a drug problem. I can quit whenever I want, and I feel fine. Let's think about that for a second and think about what motivational interviewing strategy is needed to escape to the next stage. You can feel free to pause this video to have a quick discussion with your team, or let the teams decide. If you chose open-ended questions and reflections, you're right. Of course, it's included but not limited to, so some of the other techniques may often apply, but these two are those ones that are more closely related. Using those open-ended questions can help you to gain more information about the client, maybe what is troubling them, what may be presenting as a barrier, and reflections are just to show that you're actively listening to them. All right, stage 2, contemplation. Client states, I realize that this is bad for me and my baby. I do want to stop, but the amount of stress I deal with on a daily basis is overwhelming, and I need an outlet. What motivational interviewing strategy would be needed to escape to this next stage? You guessed it, change talk, reflection, and affirmation. So change talk we know is that series of techniques with the darn cat, but having that reflection and that affirmation is still able to show the patient that you're listening to them and affirming them and encouraging them that they're able to reach their goal, regardless of what type of situation they're currently in at the moment. Stage 3, preparation. Client states, I want to remove stressors from my life and get professional help to manage, but I'm not sure where to start. What motivational interviewing strategy will we need to escape to the next stage? Affirmation and goal setting. Correct. Affirmations are your opportunity to, again, continue to encourage them and let them know that they can remove these stresses from their life, no matter how hard it may be. And goal setting to really get down to the root cause of what they want to accomplish. What is their overall goal and what would they like to do to get there? Come up with some action steps. Stage 4 is action. The client returns to the clinic and is now 29 weeks. She's found a therapist and identified a few stressors she can remove in her environment and has also been referred to a provider for medication assistance treatment. What motivational interviewing strategy would we then need to escape? Summaries and affirmations. By summarizing what the client is saying to you, it's showing, number one, that you were listening, number two, that you have all of the correct information for them to confirm or deny, and affirmations, of course, are for that continuous encouragement. Affirmations are needed really throughout each stage to let them know no matter where they are, they can reach their goal, and you, as a part of their care team, are helping them to work towards that. But wait, what do? The patient comes back at 30 weeks and has experienced a relapse prior to her first MAT appointment. What MI strategy would we use here to escape to this next round? ORs, you guessed it. Those open-ended questions, the affirmations, the reflections, and the summaries are all going to be needed in order to continue to encourage the client that even though they may have had a little bit of a setback, they can still reach their overall goal. Really to show that you're listening to them to continue to build their rapport, asking those open-ended questions to get a little bit more information, and then summarizing so you know exactly what are the next steps to make. Great job. If you guys have made it this far, this was a great opportunity for you all to practice as a team on something, again, that we do on a daily basis. Feel free to go back and change the questions, add some, maybe a prize or reward to it for your team members who get the most answers, or a little bit of a discussion just to go back into these strategies and techniques.
So in summary, let's talk a little bit about our friend Jenny. This is the mascot for the VNPC. And Jenny is sitting in a boat. So you see that she has, in her boat, shows our process for motivational interviewing. So here she is going to have her provider use those techniques of engaging the conversation, focusing the conversation, evoking what her overall goal is, and then helping plan those steps for change. And how we're going to get there, of course, is ORs. Those open-ended questions, just like Brittany was saying, the affirmations, the reflections, and the summaries, and all of that is going to help us move towards that desired change. You see in Jenny's boat, she's got an anchor in the back, and that's going to help keep our change steady. So that's that change talk we mentioned, darn cat, making sure that she's got a desire to change, she's got the ability and those reasons and the need to change, as well as having a commitment to her change, providing those action items to take next steps on implementing her change. The water itself is the change, the environment surrounding her. Now you also notice that she's got a life jacket on, and this is the motivation to change. When your patient or your client actually has a motivation to change, it could save her life. Overall, our destination is changed behavior. So how do you anticipate using some of these techniques in your practice?
So this is an opportunity for you guys. It was actually provided by the Motivational Interviewing Center for Change. Everything that we discussed in today's session is put right here on paper. This is a great opportunity to print, to post in your nursing station, or even to provide, again, at in-services or meetings for your staff to take a look over, so that if they would like to use motivational interviewing but just don't know either where to start or maybe need a little refresher, this is the opportunity for them. This even gives little tips and tricks on how to start the conversation, or little reminders that you want to make sure you're thinking about when you're facilitating motivational interviewing on the go. And this is it. We want to thank you guys for joining us for our first, hopefully of many, presentations and trainings for motivational interviewing. If you have any questions leading to, feel free to reach out at info@govnpc.org, or you can go to our website at www.govnpc.org or check us out on social media at GoVNPC to see not only what we're continuing to work on, but also to provide those questions to us so that we can make the information that we provide you better. Thank you again for joining us. Have a great day.